Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to thank the chairwoman of the Agricultural Committee for her great work bringing a bill to the floor today that does a lot of justice to families in Connecticut and across the country that are fighting every single day to be able to put food on the table for their loved ones. The fact is that although people have an impression, Mr. President, of our state as a wealthy one, we have a handful of the poorest cities in the country, and we have tens of thousands of people who have been ravaged by this economy. These nutrition programs funded in the underlying bill are an absolute lifeline to families that have been largely temporarily hit straight across the brow by this devastating recession. In Connecticut, although it's hard to imagine for some people who don't know our state, 11% of the population today are receiving SNAP benefits. 1 out of every 10 people, 1 out of every 10 families in Connecticut right now rely on food stamps to either pay for their food in whole or in part. That's over 400,000 people in Connecticut. People like the 87-year-old retiree from Southbury, Connecticut, who lives in a small, very reasonable condo. She lives on about $1,100 a month. She has gone through a $100,000 home equity line of credit, and her condo fees and her electric bill, because she lives in a small little condo that is heated by electricity alone, basically eat up the entirety of her budget. She couldn't eat without food stamps. She couldn't eat without these benefits. They keep her alive like they do for millions of seniors all across this country. Or on the other end of the age spectrum, another Southbury resident. Southbury, frankly, which, as you know, Connecticut doesn't have a reputation as a town in need, but they have hundreds of SNAP recipients, just like almost every town across Connecticut. Mrs. Smith is an unemployed mother, and she made a 6-figure salary for decades. And because her husband became disabled, she was the sole breadwinner for her family. The recession hit her just like it's hit hundreds of thousands of others across the country, and she lost her job. And now it's the $300 that she gets a month in SNAP benefits that allows her to be able to feed her kids. She's out there doing everything that we ask. She's looking for a job. She's trying to get back to work, but she's lost her unemployment benefits. They've been exhausted, and now she needs this money in order to live. The fact is that 61% of all SNAP participants are families with children. 33% of all SNAP recipients are families with elderly or disabled members in their family. These are the most vulnerable in our country, and they need a strong SNAP program in this bill. Now, I'm one of a handful of senators who cast a vote yesterday to try to add some money back. But the fact is, the real comparison is not the difference between the underlying bill and that amendment. The real comparison is between the bill that we are debating now and the bill and the budget pending before the House of Representatives today. The House Republicans' budget would absolutely devastate, eviscerate, obliterate the food stamp program, basically rescinding this nation's long-standing commitment to make sure that kids have enough to eat when their families are out of work or have hit hard times. And one of the reasons that Republicans in the House in particular have come so hard, so consistently against food stamps is because they categorize it as an overly generous handout to people who don't need it. Well, Mr. President, this week I'm testing that theory. For this week, because we're debating this bill on the floor of the House, I decided to see what it would be like to live on the average food stamp benefit for people in my state of Connecticut. That average benefit in Connecticut is about $4.80 a day. I'm finding out now 3 days into this that even on this budget for just a week, it is pretty hard to eat enough to just not be hungry. Never mind eat healthy foods. I went to the grocery store, tried to buy some fruit and vegetables for the week, and could barely find anything that fit within that budget. I was able to buy some bananas for 69 cents a pound. I went to go try to get peanut butter, but the only kind of peanut butter you could get was the kind loaded with preservatives, because the stuff that's better for you costs a lot more. Over and over again, people who are right now on food stamps are going hungry. Never mind the kind of hunger that they would be confronted with if we further cut this program. They have to make choices every day when feeding their kids. Do I give them enough calories so they will go without hunger pains for the day, or do I try to get them a smaller amount of food that's maybe a little bit better for them? That's what these families have to think about every single day. And I'm not suggesting that doing this budget for a week allows me to walk more than a few steps in their shoes, but it is an education on how little you get out of this benefit today, and it is a caution for this body to stand up to the House of Representatives if the Farm Bill gets to conference to make sure that these cuts don't get any worse. The stories of the senior citizen and the unemployed mother in Southbury, Connecticut, are two of millions of stories all across this country. These are people who have paid their dues, who are playing by the rules, who just need a little bit of help from us in a bad economy. And by no means is this program an overly luxurious handout. Let me tell you from a very brief anecdotal experience that it is pretty hard to go without hunger on $4.80 a day, never mind try to provide a healthy meal for your kids. So, Mr. President, I just wanted to come down to the floor this evening and applaud the efforts of our colleagues who are trying to push through a bill that will get to conference so that we can be in a strong position to defend the nutrition titles of this bill, which are keeping people, kids, the disabled, elderly alive today. There are those of us who would have liked to have seen even more support in this bill for nutrition programs. We failed in that attempt earlier this week, but we are united in the fact that a farm bill that comes out of the House and the Senate and goes to the President's desk has to keep the promise that we have made to generations, to kids across this country. We're going to make sure that you have enough to eat. Thank you, and I yield back the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.